of Comparative Zoology at Harvard, and I will be your moderator for this chunk of the day. Welcome. We want to thank, welcome to Spinach. Feel free to, move up if you need to. There's lots of room. Although it is nice, I will say from a speaking perspective, that we're mostly all this way. I know which way to turn. Welcome to Spinach. I hope you're having a great time so far. There should be some time around for questions, but we also encourage you to go to Oxford Abstracts to continue the conversation online if we run out of time and you want to ask a presenter a question. We want to thank our sponsors for the conference this year. They're listed up here on the slide. And then we also want to especially thank Delta Designs and Picture A, our diamond sponsors for the conference. And from there, we're just going to get started.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Thanks for being here early, especially if you're not actively involved in either of these TCNs. Thank you for coming. My name is Lily Berniker. I'm with the American Museum of Natural History. Rudiger Bieler is here in spirit, and together with Alana, we are going to talk to you about what these two TCNs are. So during the symposium today, you're going to hear detailed talks about workflows, our education and outreach components, how the grants are organized. But first, Alana and I are going to give you an overview of what the TCNs are, who we are, and what we are trying to do. So first, I'm going to talk to you about the DigIn-TCN. DigIn is shorthand for documenting marine biodiversity through digitization of invertebrate collections. And in case anyone here is not familiar with TCNs, just briefly, TCN is a thematic collections network. These are grants that are funded by NSF under the Advancing Digitization of Biodiversity Collections program. They are intended to be a network of institutions with a strategy for digitizing information that addresses a particular research theme. So the data are easily accessed and available online for other people to use. DigBio serves as the coordinating institution, and these began being awarded in 2011, and there have been 33 of them to date. So both DigIn and ESB were funded in 2020, but prior to that, as you can see up here, there were no TCNs that were focused on any living marine invertebrates. So these were mostly herbaria holdings and terrestrial arthropods. That was the majority of the two groups that were funded. But in 2020, both ESB and DigIn were funded. That's us in the dark blue there in 2020. And these are all of the TCNs to date now going up to the current year. So why do we want to digitize marine invertebrates? Well, the marine biome is the largest, yet least well-known biome on Earth. Approximately 75% of described marine species are invertebrates. And when we say marine invertebrates, we're actually talking about a very large, diverse assemblage of more than 30 different animal phyla. And despite this, though, they remain poorly known and poorly represented in online databases. And as I said, no previous digitization network had focused on living marine organisms before. Another reason to digitize is that once this data is available online, it provides a basis for future research. So these can be things like global patterns of diversity and distribution, climate-driven range shifts, reconstruction of historical communities. So specifically, our DigIn objective is to improve the accessibility of marine biodiversity data by more than doubling the digitally accessible marine invertebrate records, excluding mollusks from non-federal collections. So DigIn is focused on mostly fluid-preserved marine invertebrates other than mollusks, and mollusks are covered, as you'll hear, in a portion of mollusks, at least in ESB. So specifically, how we aim to do this is by databasing and making available online 835,000 specimen lots, which equates to approximately 7.5 million specimens, georeferencing 175,000 existing or newly digitized station records, mobilizing or creating new 464,000 images of both type and non-type specimens, improving our nomenclature in our databases, synchronizing that with forums, and also we're aiming to unite the marine collections community to develop resources based on these data. And if you want more specifics, we do have a project website, so you can visit that. So who are we? We are 19 collections across 18 different institutions. We're spread across the country, including Hawaii, which didn't make it onto the map there. Altogether, we estimate we have about 1.8 million lots of non-mollusk marine invertebrates in our collections. So there's a spread there across the collections that are involved in the grant. And prior to the beginning of DigIn, only about a third of these had been databased, a little over 600,000 lots before the project began. So our targets, again, this is broken down by the collections involved in the grant, are 835,000 lots to database and 464,000 images that we want to mobilize or create new. And where are we so far? So we're about halfway through the grant. As I mentioned, we began in the fall of 2020, so it was year one of COVID. A lot of us had either no access or little access to our collections, so we actually couldn't get in there to begin the digitizing. So we started out by doing things we could do remotely, like doing transcriptions of card catalogs or scanning station logs and cleaning up our data in preparation for georeferencing. So we got off to a bit of a slow start, although we have picked up steam over the last year and a half. So as of our last quarterly report at the end of April, we have more than 368,000 lots that have been digitized. So about 44% of our goal, more than 54,000 images. They're now available online. It's about 12% of our goal. And you can see the progress here again in blue are the lots to digitize, green are the images. And I've just split it up here because we have some collections that have a much higher target goal than the others. So just so it's easier for you to read the scale. I've got these in two spots. So how we actually got to this point, you're going to be hearing about with the other talks today. So I'm just going to leave this here, say thank you, and Alana will now talk to you about what ESB is all about.
All right, so introducing myself again, in case you're late. My name is Alana Rivera. I'm at the Museum of Comparative Zoology at Harvard, and for now you can imagine me as being Rudiger Blair from the Field Museum. So I'm sitting in for Rudiger, and I'm telling you about mobilizing millions of marine mollusks of the eastern seaboard, essentially a basic introduction to the ESB TCN. And for the rest of the day in this room, you will probably only hear DigIn and ESB, because those are really long names, and it's not worth saying out every single time. So ESB differs from DigIn in a couple of ways. So first off, it's a geographic approach. So we're only looking at the U.S. Atlantic coast, and its economic exclusive zone. So we're looking at about 6,000 kilometers of coastline covering 18 states. These are places with various human impacts and a diversity of marine species. And this project seeks to create a baseline of mollusk data for the area. And the other way that it's different is that we have a taxonomic focus. So ESB is focused on a single phylum, just mollusks, but it's a very diverse group, and this group includes a huge preservation range. And because this group is well sampled in natural history collections, there are opportunities to use the data to answer environmental and biogeographical questions through about the 3,000 living species that are covered. And like DigIn, ESB connects to other PIs and other projects. So both DigIn and ESB are using invertebrates as the portal to put everyone's data. We're doing geolocate and using Koji, so collaborative geolocating. Help collections get some of that work done with lifting from many people instead of just relying on a single institution. We're ensuring that member institutions are integrating their data into iDigBio, GBIF, and OBIS. And we're embracing new partners, essentially institutions that are new to TCNs, trying to bring in more people who haven't done this stuff yet, which helps us get more data available. ESB preparation started during the invertebrate TCN, essentially with community-wide questionnaires. There was a paper from Petra Sirad, Liz Shea, Jay Rosenberg, and did I get everybody? And Rudiger, covering mobilizing mollusks. And so sort of through that work, there's the idea of an analysis of the composition, size, condition, and relevance of regional collections. And then on the map on here, you might notice that some of the points are green. Those are really large collections, and then the other points are collections that have material from this whole eastern seaboard region. And so the idea is, it's well worth trying to collect all this information. And the ESB TCN has added one pen, which is a partner to an existing network already, which is the Paleontological Research Institution in Ithaca, New York. And the result of all of this is a really broad collaboration of people. So ESB includes 18 institutions. 90% of the known eastern seaboard mollusks are contained within these collections. And there are large institutions to small, and there's specialty collections as well as large institutions. And some of the institutions are new to digitization, and some of these institutions are new to working with NSF funding and sort of the reporting that's involved with all of that as well. So in some ways, trying to give a lot of information to some institutions that are new to all of this. All right. So ESB's main project aims include the digitization of 4.5 million specimens, collaborative georeferencing, and development of marine-specific needs. So adding that into geolocate. So we're really interested in things like bathymetric data, benthic habitats, marine conservation areas, and how we can sort of show that better and be mindful of that better in our geolocating work. And you'll hear more about that, some of that from Nelson Rios in the next talk. We're also working on improvements to worms and mollusca base using sort of the taxonomic know-how and systematic knowledge to improve those systems as well. So it's more of a collaborative back and forth rather than just accepting everything. There's partnership there. And then also we're providing training and educational opportunities. And Ms. Shea later and her collaborators will tell us later more about how ESB can be used in undergraduate research experiences later in this symposium. And this is a big challenge. This is an example of a big collaborative issue that has come up through ESB where folks have been working together. So a big issue when we're talking about mollusk specimens is talking about life and death, which seems like a big topic. So shells hang around for a long time if you go and pick up a shell on a beach. So there are 3 images of shells here on this picture. So on the left, if you look at shell A in this one, we might find dried tissue inside of this shell, indicating that the gastropod that it came from was alive fairly recently, right? Like when we got it, there were still soft, squishy bits in it. So in a way, this was collected when it was alive. B, the middle one, a lot of the sculpture is eroded away from the shell. A lot of the detail is missing, which you might not know just by looking at that one shell, but if you were looking at a drawer of them and you saw more recently collected ones, you would notice that the form had much more nuance to it than this shell. So in a way, this specimen was not live collected. It had been sitting out for a very long time when it was collected. And then for C, the one on the right, this is a Pleistocene shell fossil. So again, very not recently living. So why does this matter? This is really important because when we're trying to look at occurrence data, if what we're providing to people is occurrence data, whether or not something was alive when it was collected says something about that place and whether or not that organism actually came from that place or it washed up from somewhere else, meaning we don't know, right? And that's important in terms of data that people are harvesting for answering other questions. And Bridget Kelly will talk about that later in this symposium, closer to noon, if you want to hang out for that excitement. And so ESB is distinguishing between live and dead collected specimens with a defined vocabulary and for traits that can be added to each record. And this isn't just within the narrow world of ESB, right? We've taken this on out to Darwin Core and to Tadwick to try and sort of create standards that can be used across collections and across not just natural history collections, but also, biological collections in general. So that's a good example of some of the collaboration that's going on. So yeah, that's basically the general overview of DigIn and ESB. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know. Also remember that you can follow up on the Oxford abstracts. And thank you. Next up, we have Nelson Rios, who will be talking to us about georeferencing fun stuff.